Hopefully I remembered everything. And we should be live now.
Excelente.
If I did everything right, it's been a while.
It's the first quick review in a long time.
So what are we reviewing today? Well, I mean, it's on the screen, like right over there.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
We're reviewing a lovely scenery track, the first really released scenery track that's been released that isn't one of ours.
Since we started doing quick reviews, which is really depressing.
It's very depressing, but we're very happy that we get to see this now.
Yes.
Rather than not having scenery tracks at all.
Yes,
so,
indeed.
This is Mind Mischief, which I like it. There's lots to talk about, though.
Should we watch it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh, man. Good old-fashioned Windows Movie Maker. It's been a while. Hello, darkness, my old friend. It's got some Mr. ZNF in there, too. So this is technically a two-person project. What's the story on that?
Basically, there was a track that ZNF... I think I must have mentioned him at some point, but ZNF and Depot were going to collaborate, and ZNF made the track, and Depot, started the scenery, but didn't make very much. And then I, mentioned it to Yoban, and he was like, oh, could I have it? And I was like, sure. So I sent him the track. But he added some onto the track, but ZNF made the track for Depot to scene, and then Yoban eventually scened it. So that's the story.
Yoban also mentioned that he added some onto the end.
Yes, he did. Anyway, now we've just spent all this time talking about the track and not about the scenery that was going by.
Yeah. So, one of the reasons I did that is because sometimes it's a little difficult to focus on everything. The track itself is very high speed, even when you're doing the 30 FPS, quote-unquote, Rabid smooth.
Yeah.
It's still difficult to process all this scenery when it's high speed like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the main takeaway that I have from this track is the track is a very standard manuquirk, you know? And then adding scenery to that is that there's limitations to what you can do, and the scenery is going to go by pretty quickly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just because, with the ZN Freak, I mean, I would say ZN Freak style track, but in this case, it's literally a ZN Freak track.
Yeah.
It's just fast. It's supposed to keep you entertained as a bear track, and so as a scenery track, it's super, things just go by so fast. It's rapid fire. And it doesn't let up.
And I think none of that's Yoban's fault. When you get a track, you have to adjust the track to with scenery in mind. Scene tracks are best when the track itself is made with scenery in mind, or is made concurrently.
I mean, I guess I would disagree with it's not his fault that the scenery goes by super fast. I mean,
no.
It isn't his fault that the scenery goes by so fast, but the nature of the scenery... Yeah, you want to just...
Yeah.
25% speed.
Okay, so...
The nature of the scenery is such that
clarify.
it's... I mean, he says in his description... Here, I'll go to his description again. He says, basically, I had no plan going into this other than draw cool stuff, and, more power to him for doing what he wants to do. Let's start it. 3, 2, 1, go. More power to him for just doing what he wanted to. But the track definitely suffers from... there's a certain amount of randomness, which lots of people have pointed out. But more than that, it's the scenery that's going by is going by... the scenery that's going by is not tailored to being something that goes by quickly,
Right, it needs to be...
I mean, it looks like literally what he said it was supposed to look like was, I'm just going to draw cool stuff on this track, but the track, like it's like I think there's still this struggle of thinking of a scenery track as something in motion, as a video, as opposed to just a cool drawing. Because line art is really fun and is really cool, but line art on a scenery track is not. Line art on a manuquirk does not. It's not the best kind of scenery track that we could be making, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's all these cool drawings, and they all go by really quickly. And then there's also the struggle of there's like loops everywhere in the track, and then you can see how a lot of times the scenery either has to choose between being something that, like, most of the scenery here is either like some sort of snaky loopy thing that he rides on, or something that isn't snaky or loopy and he doesn't ride on it, you know? Like, these arms and eyes are really cool, but he doesn't actually interact with them because arms and eyes aren't snaky and loopy. And then all the things that he does interact are like vines and squiggles and you know, it's yeah.
Very abstract things.
Yeah.
But not his fault. I mean, like, in this case,
I guess he does do a fling on the eye.
Yeah.
Which is just there's lots of pains taken in these kinds of manuquirk tracks when you've seen them to try to make the scenery blend into the track, and it's really hard. Which is why, you know, I have such respect for Commander Coke, who was able to actually do it decently well, you know. Anyway, you were going to say something.
I think something perhaps more apt than just fault or not his fault is the idea that, like, you think of the track and the scenery sort of as like a team. I know you know this, but to the listeners, like, and then the track is sort of the setup. Like, if you're playing volleyball, is the person who, like, sets up the volleyball so that the other person can spike it, right?
Yeah.
And that scener is the person who has to, like,
deliver.
Basically, deliver. Slam it down, score the point, whatever, sports metaphor. But the setup is going to affect the other person's ability to follow through on that.
Yeah.
And I think the setup and the delivery had two different aims.
Yeah.
And that makes it difficult for it to feel like a cohesive piece, for it to really feel like it's been nailed, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think there's going to be the problem is that so much of scenery history has been people making manual grinding tracks and then scening them, you know? And even to the point where it was like when people didn't use manuals in scenery tracks, it was seen as it couldn't be a good track because there weren't any manuals, you know? And it's like that is just a fact of how people saw tracks for most of Line Rider history, how people judge scenery tracks. And there wasn't a lot of thought put into how does adding scenery change what the bear track should be, you know? Even when you have like a track like Breathtaking Silence, with which LRG specifically said, like, this track is not about the track, it's about the scenery. He still has all these loops and granules and flings, and it's like, you know, you start to, like, I don't know, I feel like if we actually took a critical look at what kinds of tracks are best for scenery, and people make fun of me, or people have made fun of me in the past for saying, like, bear tracks have to not do all these things and do all these things to be good scenery tracks, and it's just, I feel like it's not like there's a rigid criteria of what makes a good scenery track. It's that there's very clear things that do not make for a good scenery track.
Yeah.
You know? If you have curves that cross each other, if you have if you have loops of any kind, if you have long like pinch cannons, or even short pinch cannons, if you have any kind of advanced quirk that has lots of like multiple, it's like I mean honestly, any kind of fling can be really, if it's a long fling, it can be really difficult to work into scenery, and it's not like it's impossible, but the goal of scenery should be to create a world, not to convincingly put a manu quirk into a world, you know? It's like most of the energy in scenery for most of Line Rider history is figuring out something that actually looked decent with this track, instead of creating a track and then putting scenery on top of it that's going to actually convey something or tell some sort of a story, or, you know, and so yeah, that's the dilemma. And the thing that frustrates me is that for a long time it wasn't really possible to create a large scenery track while you made the bear track. You kind of had to make the bear track first and then add scenery because there was so much lag problems.
Yeah.
But nowadays, we don't have that problem anymore, you know? We can create track and scenery at the same time, we're just not doing it.
Yeah. Well, and I think
I guess this is where I freely admit that I'm a hypocrite, because I am in the same group of people who's not doing it. You know, I haven't made a scenery track. And so, you know, Yobanjojoe here is...
Speak for yourself, man.
I suppose you've seen Serial's track, and I suppose, though, you are working on a track that does just what I'm talking about.
And also, these are not hard and fast, rigid rules either.
Yeah, of course.
For example, pinches. I definitely think in certain situations you can apply pinches super well. But, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But
foreshadowing. But like, I agree with you. It's just like you have to have a reason for it to be there, you know?
Yeah.
Just like if you put a fling in your track, you can put flings in your tracks. You just have to have a reason, and not just because flings are cool, you know?
Yeah, I like to imagine like
a reason that's related to the scenery, not just, well, you have, like, I wanted to put a fling in this track, but like, why is the fling in the scenery? You know, no one asks those kinds of questions.
Like one of the tracks I think that accidentally did this very well is Reality.
Oh yeah.
The way that XNT took the gravity wells and turned them into these wires that were flinging him around, and to give this sense that he was like grappling with them in a very tactile way. That, I think, is one of the more interesting and probably accidentally good scenery interpretanes of quirk.
Yeah, I mean, Reality, he explicitly set out to make a, like, all-blue, like, fully seen quirk, you know, a fully seen manu quirk, you know, so it wasn't like, it wasn't like it's a great example for how to approach it, but some of the things that he came up with to work, and see, that's the whole history of scenery tracks, is when we see a scenery track that does a really good job of covering up the track and making it not look like the track is there, that's the basis for evaluating a scenery track, as opposed to, like, you know,
did you come in with a plan?
What's the quality of the vision behind what you're trying to create, you know? So, yeah.
It's so yeah, that's the question, and that's a tough thing to do when, like, the entirety of Line Rider history has been like telling you, no, you should approach scenery tracks this way. It's definitely something that you can't really ever fully disconnect your mind from unless you start out fresh with the idea that you should approach scenery tracks in a different way. Yeah. So these things are like very hard to be conscious of.
I'm not suggesting that we should we should just not have any tricks ever in scenery tracks. It's just that, you know, things
make them applied well.
Well, yeah, it's like usually when people make a track that's going to be seen, they're not thinking about the scenery while they're making the track, you know? Mm-hmm. And there used to be a good excuse for that, which was you kind of can't work on the scenery until the track's done, and it's really hard to plan that far in advance, you know? But nowadays we don't have to do that, you know. So I guess that's why this track is disappointing to me, because it's like we have these new tools, and what do we do with these new tools? We seen a bear track that someone made in 2008 that's a Manuquirk. You know, it's like, why? You know.
Yeah,
and I guess that I guess it's like especially because like it was Canopsia, and then it was this track, and it was like, you know. And I suppose I wonder if maybe he made most of this scenery before we reviewed Canopsia, so maybe it's like, it's not fair for me to blame him for that. But that's my personal reaction to seeing this, is like, well, anyway, should we actually like go through and talk about the art, because we shouldn't just spend the whole time talking about what was wrong here. So it looks like we just finished. So let's just.
I'm gonna start at like 20.
Great idea.
Ready?
Yep.
We're still slow-mo.
3, 2, 1, go.
Cool.
All right. So I really like that little explosion thing that he starts out on.
Yeah.
Just I don't know how to describe it, but
I like his use of sort of mosaic line work.
Yeah.
Because there's that, and the way he varies the thicknesses. Like, I think the way he applies different thicknesses is useful, and it like contributes to the way the art looks overall.
Yeah, like that tail manual there, and how the line he's writing on is like, it's like double thickness or whatever, and it gives it sort of a dynamic between that and the squiggles around it. Yeah,
and it gives you the impression, hey, this thing stands out. This is what he's writing on. So there is this like implicit understanding there that's like, hey, he's going to write on this.
Yeah.
I do think
it is a little strange to me when they're like here. There's just like those like 3-dimensional looking cube things, and then there was that abstract flat looking thing, and then there's these vine things. And I know that's, you know, he wasn't trying to avoid that, but it's like that's probably the most jarring part for me, is where you have abstract. I love abstract, but like when it's like we have lots and lots of different things that all count as abstract, like that doesn't necessarily make it cohesive, you know?
Yeah.
If you have like 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional abstract, and then like organic abstract, it's like those are 3 very different looking things. Oh, and then this mountain is probably my least favorite part of the track, because it doesn't have anything to do with what he's riding on. It flies by really quickly, and it's a super cool, detailed image, you know, and it goes by super fast. And I would have preferred something that you could digest easily flying past the screen, and something that's on both sides of the line that Bosch is riding on, as opposed to that very cool as a standalone image, not very great as a video. Anyway, were you going to say something?
I love the hummingbird.
Oh yeah, the hummingbird's great.
And I think it's placed well, because
this is a good example here.
The vines go around it, and you're like, okay, hummingbird surrounded by vines. I get it. I understand everything.
Like it doesn't clash. The hummingbird and vines, you're like, okay, those things make sense together, you know. And then you also have that sort of water. It looks like some sort of weird abstract waterfall thing in the background. Also looks organic. Also makes sense. Also looks good.
The line work is good, but also the fact that I think that hand fling is one of the more probably unintentionally well placed scenery, because it gives you a full rotation to look at the hummingbird.
Yeah, because he goes around the hummingbird like so you actually see the hummingbird for a few seconds on the screen, and because he's going around it, your eyes are sort of drawn to it. Mm-hmm. So that works really well.
And that's a good place to put in a detailed part. Because you're encountering the same thing multiple times. I think the simple like clouds and rails thing, while a bit overdone, is useful in this part, because it's one of the more sort of high intensity bits.
Yeah. It's nice to have something simple when it flashes by, you know.
Yeah.
And so this area.
I don't have as many complaints about this.
Another good place for a monument, though, would have been in the middle of that rail that we just passed, because he goes by it twice, and then he goes over here, and there's another one. I don't know. There's I feel like this area could have been a good spot to put something more detailed as opposed to just these vines. This part down here, though, clouds and rails just fine because he goes by it quickly, and so we want something that we're able to digest right away.
And then we get the Commander Coke bricks ending.
The Commander Coke bricks and the heart vines.
And you've been in Light
This is a fine ending. I wish there was like a dragon behind the tower or something. Like, something else to like make it pop. It kind of looks like.
Yeah, but
all right, it's a tower.
Not necessarily a dragon.
Well, not necessarily dragon. Just that's the first thing that came to my head. But
foreground,
something to centrally draw my interest at the end.
I like to think like maybe sort of a parting of clouds behind it.
Yeah, even just some clouds would have to give it a complete picture. There's a lot of empty space here, and it's the thing we stare looking at for the longest time. It's the ending. It's he stops when he gets here.
And one of the things I like about a lot of Commander Coke's stuff that I think Yoban is almost getting, but maybe needs a little more work on, is depth. A lot of Commander Coke has like a sense of depth.
Do you want to go back to 20 seconds again? And
yeah, sure.
All right.
I don't have much to say about the 2008.
All right, ready?
Yep.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Bam. Yeah.
So you were saying depth.
Yeah. So like the way the arms are shaded gives a nice sense of depth.
Yeah. Those arms are impressive, by the way. For line art, I'm impressed.
Yeah. The shading is good. It feels like appropriately messy.
It does feel a little out of place for the rest of the track because nothing else is shaded remotely that way. But they look good on a standalone.
Yeah,
they maybe don't fit.
Yeah, a lot of these opening monuments are super neat. I definitely think like that sort of abstract tree thing is interesting, if a bit out of place. And yeah, I certainly think there are certain elements here that could be a little more well composed, but like the detail's good.
Yeah.
I'm not
a lot of this stuff is cool. Like a lot of the stuff that I'm picking gripes with for one reason, I'm not mentioning that it also looks cool. I don't think there's anything in this track that, if it was just like, here's a picture of it by itself, that I'd be like, meh. Like, it all looks good,
Yeah. No. The only reason we're giving it this level of critique is because... The only reason we're giving it this level of critique is because, at a base level, everything is well done.
Yeah, like, there's nothing that looks shoddy, There's nothing that looks messy or sloppy or he doesn't overuse... he doesn't overuse tropes in Line Rider scenery. Like, there's no cave here, which is great. And there's also, there's no...
He could have totally descended into a cave.
Yeah, he totally, at any point, it'd just be like, oh, it's a cave. And there's a few rails, but considering how hard it is to make curves into anything other than rails, I think he did a really good job with creatively making them into various things on various levels of abstraction. Yeah. So he definitely succeeded with his goal to draw cool stuff. I think what I'm trying to say. I think my favorite thing about depth is this hummingbird and the vines, though, because you get in this area of the track, you get this huge sense of scale because the horizontal and vertical lines in the background, it looks to me like some sort of giant waterfall. But it's not really important for it to be something specific, but it does create this sense of a horizon and this sense of distance between Bosch and those lines. And then you put the vines, and then you put the hummingbird behind the vines, and then you've got like this 3 levels of depth, and it looks really good. And I think that part of it sort of creates this sense of wide open space for the entire track, which is also cool, So that section of it is probably the strongest in creating that. Because then because I feel like the rest of the track you view the rest of the track through that sort of open space lens that area creates because we linger on it and because it's one of the better done areas. And so when we get to these clouds, it's like there's not as much depth here, but we can sort of imagine it because we've already seen it earlier in the track.
For sure. Yeah, there's like a lot of stuff that I'm definitely like I'm vibing this for sure. I like those arrows. And just as a they're very like cute and neat, and they have this
I didn't notice the arrows until now, which is like what my fifth watch through.
yeah.
That's funny.
But I don't know. They felt like a cute take on the Vine stuff, and that could be interesting, I suppose. Um, just more of a like, hey, neat thing that I'm pointing out, and less of a like, this is the greatest, this is the second coming of Jesus.
I think overall, I want to say this is this has some really cool line art, and
Yes.
I very
Oh
much
yeah.
enjoyed watching it. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of really great ideas flying around in this thing.
Oh
Um,
man.
I would say, I mean, I would say I would say like um, one, don't feel like you have to scene a Manuquirk in order for the track to be legit. Um, two, um, I don't know, like I see I hesitate to be like pick a theme because it's like if you're having fun then just keep doing what you're doing, you know. But
Yeah.
um I don't know, sometimes having a some kind of theme or um central idea of here's what this is going to look like in general, or here's the kind of
Mhm.
world building I want to do for this track can really make it more fun to make the track and make you
I was
more
gonna
proud of
say,
it when you're done with it, you know?
yeah, like when I
Um,
started working on the gorge, I was like, one of the things I like tried to restrict myself, and that ended up working in my favor because, like the underwater section, actually, I was like, I'm gonna make like three different species of plants, and then I'm gonna
yeah.
do those in variations along the sea floor, and that ended up being like
Yeah, because
one
you
of the better sections of
it
the
does. I
track.
mean, I don't know. This may not be true for Yoban, but for me, it's like when I start doing sort of random scenery, it's like I feel like I have to come up with a new idea for every single thing I'm scening, you know,
Yeah.
and that can be just as stressful as trying to scene an entire track with caves and rails, you know.
Yeah, I want to say,
So it's a balance. It's a balance. I mean, I've certainly gone way too far in the other direction where I'm trying very hard to make it consistent and it ends up just being grueling. Commander Totes talks about when he was making Bloodlust, which mostly he was drawing those craggy rocks, and he
oh
said it
yeah,
just got
God.
just mind numbing because he was just drawing craggy rocks, craggy rocks, craggy rocks, and he just couldn't stand it. And then it's not that memorable because all it was really a bunch of craggy rocks, and so people don't really. So it's a balancing act, but I feel like sometimes it can be more fun to restrict yourself to some things, and it can make you more proud of it instead of like, oh, here's some crap I made. It's like, oh, look, here's a thing I made.
Yeah,
Instead of just being some crap, it's like it's a thing.
I have something related, and that's I think ideas have mileage. You
Mm.
can squeeze more out of a lot of these ideas that you're presenting here than you did. Which is it's not a bad thing that you didn't. It shows that you had a bunch of ideas and you wanted to get them all out, and that's cool. What I'm interested in seeing is maybe taking some of those ideas and exploring them,
Yeah.
because I think that is definitely uh,
Explore deeper into
yes,
some of your favorite ideas.
yeah. And if you look at one and you're like, oh shit, I could totally make a I could totally make a track with this thing and variations upon it. Uh, I'd be interested in watching that. I'd be interested
also,
in
also,
watching something entirely
I
seen in
would
the style of the arms.
I would much rather see um, 5 10-second tracks than one 50-second track.
Mhm.
It's another thing I want to put in here. Like, there's no scenery, and so if you like, if someone was like, I have all these scenery ideas, which it looks like you do, I would love to see like, here's some sketches, here's some idea I have, and here's some other idea I have, and just play around with stuff, and don't feel like there's this pressure to make a track, and if it's not a minute long, then no one's gonna watch it, and no one's gonna appreciate it, and it's gonna be terrible. I mean, Commander Coke sort of adopted this, and I think with Commander Coke's short tracks, they kind of look the same, which is why I wasn't a huge fan of them. But I feel like short tracks are just fine in terms of I want to play with this idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, all these comparisons to Commander Coke are a good thing.
These are all a good thing. You want to be compared to Commander Coke, the Line Rider legend.
Yeah, Commander Coke is one of like the greatest sceners of all time.
Yeah.
So, you are in good company.
Yes, indeed.
To say the least.
Well, this has gone long enough as a 30-minute quick review. Quick review.
Dude, it just shows how excited we get.
We're just so excited about scenery, man. All right. I don't think I have anything else to say.
Yeah, no.
All right.
Loved it. Add some nitpicks. Want to see more.
Yeah. So that's all. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Thanks for watching.
See you next
See
time.
y'all around.